Hello and welcome to Kohler Commentary. It's your host, Unji Kohler, and today I'm joined by Mina Park, a creative and strategist with over 10 years of experience in entertainment and marketing. In 2018, she co founded a social media agency called Crispy Chicken, securing MTV as their first client. Mina has created content that has garnered hundreds of millions of views online and has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Adweek. And I'm so excited she has joined me to talk about her journey today. Welcome, Mina.
Thanks for having me. It's kind of weird hearing you read that out in front of me. I'm like, oh,
Just bragging about all that you've already accomplished. So big props to you.
hey, well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. It's a little weird because as obviously we're here talking about like your career and your journey to get to where you are today. I actually first knew it's very weird for me to call you just Mina because I know her as Mina Onni, and Onni is just like kind of a term for Koreans to use when like younger female calls an older female Onni, even if they're not like actual sisters, since Mina is okay, I'm just gonna do Onni until I decide to like slowly let that fade away. But Mina Onni was like one of my sister's really good friends growing up, and we are originally connected through youth group back in the day. And I remember really being like, wow, Mina Onni has the power to get my sister to learn the electric or the bass or something. And then they like perform Switchfoot, Dare You to Move on the stage with like smoke and all these things. You have always been this like very cool and creative person since the very beginning. And since for me growing up, church and like all the Onnies were like huge, I guess, role models for me. I was like, oh, Mina Onni's the one that's like super fun and creative and makes me want to attend all the retreats because of the skits that you make and stuff like that. And clearly that was a huge factor in your success today, right?
Oh man, I totally forgot about like retreat skits and all that. So that's
Yeah.
a nice throwback. But no, you're way too sweet. But yeah, you're always like the little sister, growing
Yeah.
up. And I remember talking to your sister, your actual sister, Jessica, when you were getting married, and then now you're a mom, and we're like, oh my gosh, she's not so little
Yeah,
anymore.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's
That's
pretty
weird.
wild.
Yeah, I think I forget that there are some stuff that happened in my life too.
Yeah.
But since I know you mainly as that, and even though we've connected through UT and we've been through the same fellowship and things like that, I still feel like I don't know this whole other side of you. Even though I've like fangirled and witnessed things over social media, I thought it would be really fun for you to come on the pod and just be able to like share that journeys. If you want to do yourself a little more justice and share kind of the steps or who Mina Park is and what that journey was like for you to ultimately lead you today as co-founder of Crispy Chicken.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a loaded question. I saw that in
Yeah.
your pre-interviews. I was like, who is Mina Park? It's very like I'm discovering this in therapy right now too. But
Mm.
I guess the long story short, how I got to this point, I guess specifically from a creative standpoint. Yeah, so grew up in Dallas, went to school in Austin. Frankly, like I didn't know I could work in creative in the field that I am right now in terms of actually creating content. I don't know. I think there was like a stigma of like you have to be a filmmaker or you have to be like super artsy to like actually make this into a career. And so for me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna major in marketing and business because
Mm.
that seemed like kind of the responsible like route to
Yeah.
take. And I was like, okay, well, that's, yeah, like you could still be creative in marketing. And so in my head, I was like, okay, that's seems like, a plausible route. And so, yeah, it was too late for me to then like major in film because just like the amount of credits that it takes to
Yeah.
get a film degree with business degree. So yeah, I was just like, okay, I'll just go do marketing and see what's good. So ended up moving to LA pretty much right after graduating. And then I found a job at an ad agency that was in entertainment. So we were mainly making like movie posters or like digital campaigns for those movies. And then yeah, after a couple years, it was kind of the stereotypical agency life of just like working a lot of hours. And I
Yeah.
was more on the account side. I was still like brainstorming and coming up with ideas, but more so helping on the account side. And I was just like, I don't think this is what I want to do. I really would love to make skits and like would love to make
Mm.
content. But again, I still just didn't know like how I would get paid to do that. And then just like randomly, I got this gig with Major League Baseball called the MLB Fan Cave, which is like a really weird thing to describe to people. I won't
Yeah,
go
that's like
fully.
everybody's dream job like maths
Yeah.
or something.
Like, I just saw an ad that was like, "Do you wanna watch every baseball game and live in New York and, like, make content?" I was like, "Sure." And so, I ended up just applying, not thinking I would get it, and then lo and behold, I got an email saying, "Hey, like, let's go through this interview process." And so, yeah, it was kind of one of those weird coincidences, or I don't know, it was definitely, I guess, fate, destiny for it to kind of fall into my lap. And so I ended up getting it, went to New York. That was kind of really where I started my social media journey and like making content for
Ah,
social
okay, okay.
media. It opened up the doors into sports because it was only like a one season gig. And then I got a job at Fox Sports after that, working in social media. Yeah, and then worked there for 4 years, went to the Rams for a hot year. And
Oh,
then,
congrats on the
yeah,
Rams.
yeah, I had a lot to do with the Super Bowl win. Um,
Clearly.
yeah, clearly, my impact there was short, but it was felt. So, yeah, and so from there, I started working on my business, and then we just got the ball rolling and was like, should I just go full time? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then, yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been 4 years, 4 years of that. So,
So, the MLB fan cave is kind of like that shifting factor that kind of helped you
yeah.
ultimately make that transition. What was the interview process like? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I would go Google MLB Fan Cave if whoever's listening that's like, "I have no idea what this is," because it is kind of hard to explain. It was like a reality
Uh-huh.
show slash content creator. I don't know. It was weird, but,
Uh.
the process was basically like, initially when you submitted, I had to make like a 1-minute video about like why I should be part of it. And in my head, I was like, oh, like I basically sold them that I'm a marketing degree. Like I understand this is a marketing initiative for MLB and that like I'm not going just to have fun. Obviously, that's part of it, but like I am very
Mhm.
aware that, what your goals are. And so I hopefully that made me stand out. They're like, okay, she
Mm.
knows what this is about and how to like help us get to the next level. So then after that, they had this online campaign period for like 30 days. You had to like try to get people to vote for you online.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
think I remember seeing that back then.
yeah, so then I started making memes, I started making skits just to, like, again, get online votes, and frankly, I don't think it was based off of online votes, it was more so, like, and again, this is my theory, is that they just wanted clicks on the website and for brand awareness, for people to
Yeah.
know what this is, but also, I use this as an opportunity to, like, showcase my creativity. Yeah, what kind of skits can we do? Like, I can't compete against there was a guy who won, God, I forgot what reality show. He was on a reality show, had, like,
Oh.
thousands and thousands of followers. So it's just like, I can't compete against a dude that has, like that is an influencer, you know what I mean?
Dang,
Um,
yeah.
so, yeah, so it's more so, like, how do I just show them, like, what I can do, and hopefully that sticks out, right? So I ended up making it to the next round, which was the final round, where they flew 30 of us to Arizona, which is where spring training is for half of the league. In Arizona, they made us go through multiple, like, different interviews and, like, different scenarios where they made us, like, interview someone, on TV, doing a bunch of different stuff. So that was the last process, and then they chose 9 of us, and then we moved to New
Mm.
York and then started making content out there. So, yeah, it was definitely an experience I haven't done before in that sense of, like, casting and, like, interviewing, but it was a lot of fun.
And you've met, like, some other creatives during that journey that's kind of like they've stuck together as friends, or is like everyone's kind of gone their own ways?
Yeah, I'm pretty close with right now, like 3 or 4 of them. A couple of them I speak to more on like a regular basis, and then others, it's tough when you're not in the same city or like,
Yeah.
that to not hang out, but we're definitely close in that sense of like you can hit them up if you're in town or whatnot and they'll always pick up. And then yeah, and then Ricardo, who's my business partner currently,
Oh,
I
he
actually
was
met
one of
him
them.
so is he did it the year before, which is really funny. He got casted the year
Oh.
before, but then he ended up getting like a PR gig with MLB the year after. So he was
Ah.
working on the MLB side during
Yeah.
my year. So we didn't really hang out much because it was like we were talent or whatever and they didn't want to like intermingle with us too much. But that's how I met him was through that experience.
Ah.
And then he also moved back to LA after. So yeah, and then we just kept hanging out. Yeah, so I met him through this experience. So it for sure was kind of like a catalyst to a lot of things in my
Yeah.
life today. So
Yeah, I
forever
was wondering
grateful.
how you guys connected too. Cause did he work in Fox or the Rams as well, or just, like, then you guys just
No.
shared space in the city?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. He worked at some other like a media company that he didn't really work too much in sports. So I went
mm,
full on in the sports route after.
yeah.
So yeah, we were just
Why did you choose to go, I guess, full on to into sports after MLB? Was that something you always planned, or was it kind of like a better next step?
Yeah, it wasn't something that I planned. It just made sense from like doing this whole like sports thing in New York. And then it was funny because Fox Sports at the time launched their new sports network. So they were hiring and
Mm,
it just kind of worked out. And like, yeah, I never thought of working in sports like as like a career, in college. I always wanted to do music.
yeah. I
And
mean,
I
I
still
think
haven't worked in music.
you've been interested in sports, right? Like
Yeah, like I liked sports, which is why I think after working like 5 years in sports, I was like, I
yeah.
gotta get out because it was like too much sports all the time.
Mm,
In sports, you work a lot of weird hours, holidays, nights, weekends. It's
mm,
always like the worst times. So yeah, I was eventually trying to get out of sports, and I've always liked entertainment and getting back into that, and so was very fortunate to be able to like transition from sports back because it's really hard to do so. Like I was
yeah.
struggling to get interviews outside of sports
Right,
because they're
because you
like,
were
"Oh,
in that
all you know is."
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, you can people are smart. Like people can
Yeah,
like they're
versatile, you can
great.
change things up.
Yeah, like you can apply things you learned in one area to another. So I'm really happy that I was able to kind of get out a little bit.
Wait, so then after Fox Sports and the Rams, or Rams is with Fox Sports?
No, I left Fox Sports, went to Rams for like a year.
And then you
Um,
started Crispy Chicken right after that?
Yeah, so I kinda started while I was at the Rams.
Ah.
Ricardo was working full time on Crispy Chicken, because he was
Oh, okay.
freelancing at the time, and so I was basically working, like, nights and weekends at the time and just, like, helping him out to try to get, some momentum going. Because we were trying to be smart about it and, like,
Mhm.
obviously not for me to not quit a full-time
Yeah,
job and then we
yeah,
don't have any
yeah,
money or any prospects. So, yeah, it was really just like, let's see if we can get any momentum, and then we started to get momentum, and then, yeah, it
yeah.
was ultimately at that point, it was like, I gotta make a decision, and that's I made a decision and went for it, and yeah,
Good
it's
decision.
yeah.
Well, I guess before we move into the meat of our conversation, working in sports, being an Asian American woman in sports, I think just like kind of curious, maybe like a high and a low of what that kind of job was
Mm,
like for you in those identities. Because I know that's like a little bit difficult to be a woman in sports in certain ways, so I wasn't sure. I've never heard that
yeah.
experience from you.
Yeah, I mean, being a woman in sports is very hard, and it's still very hard, even though I've been removed from it for like 4 years now. You hope to see some progression, and obviously, there's still a lot of issues in the media front and just like, on the field as well, or court, or wherever women athletes are. My experience, yeah, I mean, there weren't a lot of other Asian women. There weren't a lot of diversity generally, just women and diversity race, like, and then factor that into being
Yeah.
a woman of color is also very rare. So yeah, I mean, you're in rooms where you'll hear comments or jokes as they call it, and you're
Mm.
kind of like,
Not a
you shouldn't say that, right?
Mm.
Yeah, or you just feel like you're not being heard. So yeah, I think that's I don't know, it sucks to say, but a lot of times you kind of just have to like nod in the moment and just kind of go with
Mm.
it, or like you try to be vocal, but it is really tough, right? If you don't have
Yeah.
the support of even other like women or other people of color to be like,
Yeah.
standing in solidarity with you, or
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
just feels like you're by yourself, kind of creating some noise. But that's kind of was my experience. I was really fortunate though that I was in a group and department that really like embraced me and like helped
Mm.
me. Like I would pitch some wild ideas and my bosses were like, go for it.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah, in a lot of ways, like I felt supported, but I can't speak for maybe everyone else that was, in those environments. But yeah, yeah.
I feel like I see you like kind of like reflecting back on those years, and it's also like a new chapter has begun. But I'm curious, so as you started your journey in this career path, how that response was like, even just being in a Korean household, and like this is a more of a, I think like a radical job, especially when like we do like look for like stability or like security
Mhm.
in certain ways, and so for the most part, I feel like your parents were like so cool. So I feel like I don't know if they actually had a problem or not, but like in general, what were some of those either negative comments or doubts that might have seeped in because of this more like radical journey you embarked on?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, my parents have been super supportive in the sense that, yeah, like they never really told me no, which I think was, awesome to have growing up. I know in high school when we were like deciding what majors, I should go into college, I was like, I think I can do marketing, and they were like, maybe like engineering. What do you want? Because, I'm good at math. I was like, yeah, it's probably more stable and whatnot. So they would interject more like that versus being like, no, you can't do like marketing or you're going to be a
Mm,
doctor. Like, and so,
mm,
yeah, I'm very grateful in that regards. I didn't feel too much pressure. And yeah, and I think also just like, hopefully, again, speaking for them, that they understood, I guess, my ambition and like personality of like, I'm going to figure it out or I'm going to like try to go get a job or like not to like, sit around, etc. So I think after a few times, like once I got the MLB gig, they were supportive of me of like quitting and going for it too. And then I think through that process, they're like, okay, Mina's, I don't know what she's doing, but like clearly
she's
she
doing
knows what she's
something,
doing. Yeah,
yeah.
like she has a vision or she's gonna get like I don't even know if they understand what I do as a career right now, but it's like
Yeah.
they're like clearly she does, so like let her run with it. So that's kind of been like our support, yeah, for the past few years of just like
Mm,
I trust you or like you clearly like know what you're doing. So yeah, I've been very fortunate in that regards of them not really holding me back. I'm sure it would have been different if I had a few like hard years of like not
yeah.
not being able to make a living or pay for rent or for
Yeah.
bills. So I've been really fortunate in that regards.
It's interesting because I just realized your parents have two entrepreneur daughters because your sister also
Yeah.
has her own business. That's kind of
Yeah.
cool that they're very supportive on that end. T
Yeah, I think similarly too with my sister, yeah, they let her like do her thing and hopefully it's not too rare, but definitely I know the stereotype of, Asian parents being pretty strict and
Yeah.
hard. In some ways too, it's kind of how I'm built and my sister's probably built too of like, oh, we have to like make them proud. Like
Yeah, yeah,
almost like
yeah, yeah.
innately, even if
Yeah.
we don't feel that pressure, it's like, oh, like I gotta succeed. So yeah, I think that's also kind of drove us to just keep, moving and keep going forward.
Have you always shown that go-getter side since you were young? Since like even when your parents weren't sure, they were like, "Oh, but trusting in your vision or trusting that you'll figure it out." Like, was that always a part of you?
Yeah, I think like probably more so in high school I started developing that. Like I've
Mm.
always been really like shy.
Oh. See,
It's
I would never have
yeah,
known that as a
yeah,
동생.
yeah, like, I was always a kid in school that was like, "Just put me in the back corner, like, don't call on
Mm.
me," like, because I also don't like public speaking, which is something I'm working on and developing. But in, like, ninth grade, I saw an opportunity to be a ball girl for the Dallas
Oh,
Mavericks.
yeah! Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other I was so jealous that you were the ball girl because I love them that's right, that's my first yeah.
But so I was, like, so determined, I was like, "Well, okay,
Yeah.
how do I become a ball girl?" So then I started, like, researching, and it was like, "Oh, you actually just have and like I found the process. It's like you have to go to their basketball camp and then from there like you get an application.
Mm.
And so I signed up to be go to the basketball camp, went through the camp and I like playing basketball too, so it was like cool.
Yeah.
Went through the camp, got the application form, submitted it, and then I got chosen. And once I got that, I would like drive downtown by myself. So I was like 16 at the time, like I had my driver's license. I would drive to the games by myself, go work, drive back home and stuff like that. So I didn't know this until like recently because my parents actually like mentioned it. They were like, "Oh yeah, like when Mina was in high school, like in 10th grade or whatever, like they were super impressed that like I took the
Mm.
initiative of like figuring out like how do I get to this point and just like going for it." So that's kind of like my earliest memory of like
Yeah.
really taking like, oh, I can like take it into my hands and like
Mhm.
just go do it and like try to. So I think from there, that's kind of like, I don't know, that was more memorable in terms of like taking that initiative and taking
Yeah.
that control. Yeah, and going for it.
I think that really resonates with me because I think one, I only know you in the church capacity too, which is like sometimes we feel a little more alive in that capacity or more like ourselves. But I was
Mhm,
also like a super shy girl in school, right? And kind of
mhm.
like a lot more reserved, which I think a lot of times my friends at church would be surprised to hear that. But yeah, I think just hearing like the initiative you did take and, being able to like you don't have to be the outspoken one or like things like that. Like you can still make your dreams a reality, even if it's a ball girl in that age. I think that's like really important
Yeah.
for us to hear. And so that really resonates with me too.
Yeah. No, for sure. Maybe it's just people don't go that extra step to like, putting
Yeah.
themselves out there. And yeah, even in my like shy self, I was like, oh, I'll do it. And like, and granted, like when I reflect about my time, even as a ball girl, I was definitely still very shy. Like I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
within the group of ball kids, I was still very much like, I don't know who you guys are. And like, I'm just here to do a job and like
Yeah.
whatnot. So like, yeah, definitely I would have approached it differently now. Yeah, I think at that time I was just like, oh yeah, like there's an opportunity. Let's try to
Did you
figure it out.
ever talk to Dirk or touch him?
I mean, we
Not
wouldn't have like
inappropriately.
yeah, we wouldn't have like full on conversations. Like,
Yeah.
we'd obviously just like we're helping them warm up.
Yeah.
But yeah, not like, hey, how's your
How's
how's
your
your
life?
home?
Yeah.
Yeah, how's
But you were in the vicinity, so that's another yeah. I remember just being
yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, Mina is so cool and she's near Dirk." But yeah, so I guess like fast forwarding, right? In that same type of mindset and attitude of like kind of putting things into your own hands and letting them actually come into fruition. We are here today where you're a co-founder of Crispy Chicken, and I would just love to hear like kind of what that moment was. It sounds like it was already in a lot of pre-planning stages with Ricardo when you were still working, but when did y'all realize like this was something that's actually going to be your full-time job?
Yeah, so like what I was saying when I was working at the Rams, and I was working on crispy chicken on the side, I was like, there was a moment when like suddenly there were like multiple people like inbound asking about needing help. And then
Mm.
we already had, so MTV was our first client and we already had that gig. But then it was like,
Oh.
oh, we had this one client and then we're getting other people interested. And so that was a moment when I was like, I think if I dedicated more time to this, it can grow faster. And it was one of those moments too where, and I think a lot of millennials feel this, maybe not so much Gen Z, but where you kind of feel like if you're at a job, you want to give them at least 2 years or like 3 years
Mhm.
before you
Yeah.
like go to another job. So I was only there, I think, for like 8 months. And so I kind of had this like feeling where like, I would love to give them another year, obviously because I just got there. But then the other side of my brain was like, what would a year of me being at the Rams do for me? I would be at the same position. I would probably be the same pay, maybe a little bit of a raise. The skill set, would pretty
Mm.
much be the same as well of like what I'm doing. Or if I spent that year working on this business, like I would have probably exponentially been able to give it more
Yeah.
and grow it more. And so that ultimately helped me make that decision too of like being okay with stepping away even though I've only been there for less than a year, of just really trying to put, okay, like what's the best use of my time and figuring that out. So that was kind of like that moment of like deciding like I want to go full time. We have some
Mm.
momentum going, we have people interested. Let's dedicate more time to help it grow faster. So yeah, that's how it all started. It was very scary though. It doesn't it wasn't as easy
Yeah.
as maybe I made that sound.
What were those fears? Like the biggest fears about starting a business and having to like overcome those fears?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of it was the instability of it because like we started this bootstrapped, which means we didn't have any investors or we didn't have any like capital
Mm.
to start with. Like we were literally building our salaries off of like sales, like what we were getting,
Wow.
right? So, I mean, if you talk to Ricardo, he was eating like ramen every day. And even when we started, like we took a pretty big pay cut so that we can like obviously save money because again, we're just bringing in what we sell. So a lot of it was kind of just like, oh, I wonder if we can keep getting clients to come in so that we can have a steady paycheck. I don't know. I think a part of it is also obviously the fear of failure is always there of like, oh, what if I just leave a job, and they were going to Super Bowl that year too. And so,
Oh.
right. So it's like that was, you're leaving a good team that has
Yeah.
a pretty good future and a stable job, a stable income for something that's totally like you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. So I think ultimately I was like, I'm not getting any younger. I don't have kids or really big expenses in that regards. And so like if I'm going to suffer for
Yeah, now's the
for a
time to
bit,
suffer.
right. Yeah, I think it was a good opportunity to try that
Mm.
risk and to go for it. So,
What does, like, the beginning stages of building or starting a business look like then?
man, it's a lot of just like you don't know. You're just like I think you kind of start looking at what other people are doing. You're like, okay, I think we need to build a deck, and then you start writing a deck, and then you're like, okay, I think it looks like they do a lot on their social media. Should we be doing stuff on our social media? And like, it's a lot of yeah, just figuring it out on the go. And it really is truly no one knows what they're doing. Yeah, with us, it was literally like we're just trying our best because none of us started a business before. And so even like taxes, setting up
Yeah.
the business and all that kind of stuff, like we're so green to it and like we had no idea until we got a letter in the mail, from the city of LA being like you guys got to pay this tax and we're like, "Oh,
Oh.
we didn't realize this was a thing." Like it's literally like as things would come up, we would learn. So yeah, a lot of it was just like you just trial and error, and then things pop up, and then you learn about it, and then you keep going.
Going
So it's
forward.
pretty messy. It's pretty
Yeah, I think,
it's
like,
pretty chaotic. Yeah.
the numbers portion would scare me away from building a business of any kind, but I'm glad it wasn't something that was, like, too heavy to, like, deal with.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty wild. Like once you get into it and then you realize how many things that you have to sign up for or you have to register or like you have to like keep in mind from the get-go. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, let's just sell our service. And it's like, cool. And then like what it does it take to actually start selling and making money? It can get
Yeah.
pretty overwhelming. So I think for me it was maybe ignorance of like starting it and
Mm.
maybe that helped with the
Yeah, to
fear
just,
of like,
like
yeah, if I
get
knew
through.
all that stuff going into it, maybe that would have deterred me a little bit more. But because I
Mm.
didn't know, and I was just like, yeah, let's do it. That like it just kind of was more natural, if that makes sense.
So you started Crispy Chicken with Ricardo in 2018, and then
Hmm.
I'm sure, like, right, that's it takes time to build and like feel a
Hmm.
little bit settled, if that's the word. But then what I'm assuming, and this is all assumption right now, and from like things I've tried to read about Crispy Chicken, is I'm assuming when you kind of were getting settled is when the pandemic happened.
Yeah,
So can you, like, take us back to kind of all of that? Because it seems
yeah.
like right now it's like actually the pandemic was a time where you guys ended up really thriving and kind of being featured in different ways, but I'm
Hmm.
sure it wasn't, like, all like that at the beginning, and I feel like there would have been a lot of new fears.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like the February before the pandemic hit, so like a
Yeah.
month before, we
Yeah.
actually got a bigger office and then we had our first two employees. So we were like, okay, this is a new chapter of Crispy Chicken. Like we're doing the thing. And we were actually working on a tour, a comedy tour, a pretty big one. And
Oh.
so we were helping out with that. We had like this cool like brick and mortar that was opening in Santa Monica that we were working on. Like we were like, okay, like we found our footing. We're gonna go shoot some stuff too. And then of course the pandemic happened. The tour gets canceled. The brick and mortar goes under because obviously everything was
Um,
closed. And so there was a minute there when we are like, when everyone thought this was just like for 2 weeks. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
yeah, after the 2 weeks, some of our clients were pausing. We were like, oh man, like did we just totally like lose, this business too,
Mm,
right? Like
yeah.
how are we going to shift? But fortunately, like a lot of people were starting podcasts at the time and they needed help with like putting that together. At that time, it was like a lot of media companies who we were already working with, right? Like we were working with MTV and VH1. Like since they weren't shooting new seasons, they had to then repurpose what they had like currently. And so we're like repurposing
Mm.
masters and it's like, cool, give us your content and we'll make new memes or we'll make like new content that's still like relatable to like what's going on today. So that's really kind of how we started thriving, was like we already knew that side of the business outside of creating new content. And so people started to kind of rely on us of like, hey, like how do we keep surviving like on our social channels during this kind of dead period of not having new content and not being able to shoot new content. So yeah, so
Mm,
ironically, after a few months of like, oh, how are we gonna even,
screwed.
yeah, how are we gonna get new business too? Like we can't do
Yeah.
networking anymore, like the
Yeah.
way we used to. So yeah, we ended up thriving, finding new clients still within it. And then we were able to really like double, triple like our staff today. Yeah, from the start of the pandemic. So
Wow.
yeah, again, super fortunate because obviously it was not like that for a lot of industries.
What do your services like actually offer
Yeah.
to all, if you were to explain to your parents or a listener that doesn't know much about marketing or the creative side, like what is it that Crispy Chicken offers to their
Yeah.
clients? And like it sounds like it's very, very versatile in what you guys can give.
Yeah, so basically we specialize in organic social media. So there's organic social media and paid social media.
Ah,
Paid
mhm.
social media is basically the people that run ads on like Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook, right? That you get served. And organic social media is basically like the content that just naturally you'll see in on these platforms, right? Like if you follow Nike on Instagram, it's basically the posts that they make on their feed that aren't, promoted.
Yeah.
So we really specialize in building communities, again, organically. So
Oh.
like you're actually trying to get people to be fans of your page or like have conversations and like have them kind of build that relationship. So in that sense, like our services are anywhere from social strategy. What is your goals? Is it to grow in followers? Is it to then like, convert and
Mhm.
have them buy something, etc. And really building out that roadmap. We also offer like social media management. So actually like building out a calendar and like, what is the content going out each day? What is the copy? And then actually like publishing and then like interacting, with commenters. And then the third real big bucket is the content creation. So what is
Mm.
the actual content going on these platforms, and then shooting it, editing, design, graphic design, etc. So we basically cover the whole process of organic social media. So,
I feel like that sounds so much cooler because it's like you build community and you have kind of like that relational aspect even in the ways that you do the work, but it also sounds like a lot more work too because you have to know fully, like
yeah,
and
it's a slower grind where it's like, yeah, it obviously takes time, right, to build a relationship like in real life too with people. But it definitely is more fun, I think, because it's
yeah,
it's it is a little bit, you're tapping into psychology and like you're tapping into like what do people actually want to share, on their IG story from Instagram or like share from TikTok, rather than constantly just like how do I get people to buy something. It's more so like how do I like get people to actually enjoy following these accounts. So it's more fun in that regards of like trying to figure that out.
I read in one of the articles that you guys were featured in that, even your guys' identities as people of color and being able to be a bridge to some of your clients who don't know how to engage
Mm,
with certain communities. How does that feel to be able to use that as like a really big strength in your work
mm.
and just being able to kind of represent communities even with the ways that you guys strategize?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think as like POC, like you'll see some companies post something and you're like, isn't it obvious that this was like not a good post? I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen that. Like you're like, it's 2022 and people are still like brands or people are still making this mistake, right? Obviously for us, I think it could be more commonplace of like, I think we're a bit more sensitive to like, how certain things are, said language wise or just like the perception, right? And so really for us, like we've been very fortunate to like work with a lot of diverse clients. So the work that we
Mm,
do for them is very much like we're speaking to certain communities. And so yeah, we are able to
mm,
have that kind of lens from being POC and our staff also being diverse as well, to be able to be like, okay, are we saying this incorrectly, or like is this offensive, etc. So I think we're just, I guess, extra sensitive in that regards, and that maybe other like agencies wouldn't be as top of mind for them. So
right.
yeah, I think in that sense, like, we hope to be as aware as sensitive to, whichever community we're talking to. But
Mm.
yeah, it is interesting that you would think it's a little bit more obvious, but I still think there's a lot that people and brands need to learn. And I mean, we're still learning too,
Right.
obviously. Like it's not
Right.
like you're never not learning. So yeah, it's been great though in terms of like we work with great clients and they're very collaborative in that sense too with us.
So you said you tripled your staff number. What is it like being, because before it's just like you and Ricardo
Yeah.
kind of like, I'm assuming like more like buddies and like, collaborating and things. And
Yeah.
now like you're suddenly in charge of people and, their own livelihood in different ways. And so
Mhm.
how have you kind of grown as like a boss?
Yeah, it's pretty strange. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
it's
think
cool.
like because you're right, like it was very much just like me and Ricardo, we just have to figure out how do we eat? Are we okay with this pay cut? Are we okay with raising like we
Yeah.
didn't really have to like have someone above us say yes or no in that regards. And I think also being a good employer is very hard. And I also understand this coming
Mm.
from, working at corporate
Mm-hmm.
places and the general stigma that like working in corporate America is not fun and like employers aren't on your side, etc. So we've been very sensitive in that regards when we started hiring employees of like how do we make sure like we don't fall into the same trap or like the same system as like where we came from, right, where like people
Mm-hmm.
are scared at their job or like feel like they can't open up to their supervisors or like have like discussions or transparency. So we've been very vocal with them from the start of just like, hey, like, let's have this open communication, like let's try to be good bosses and also really think of them as humans too, right? So I think it was the process has been very much finding a fine line between the business needs and also just being a human and like being able to make sure that they're not being burnt out or they're happy, or if they do have any needs that we'll hear them out, while also, yes, I do understand why some employers make the decisions that they need to make, because at the end of the day you have to have hit certain margins, etc. So I think it's been an interesting journey of finding that balance of like we're here not to just have fun, but like we're running a business, right, and we want to make sure everyone's happy. And like, yeah, it's been an interesting journey in that regards.
Okay, so if you had to reflect now that you're here, like one, what are some things you might have done differently back when you guys were in the startup phase?
Mhm.
And what were like one or two very clear events when you were like, let's stop crispy chicken or
Yeah. So one thing that I wish I was or I could have changed when we first started, I think probably just being more vocal about asking for help. Especially going into something that we've never done before. I don't know. I think it's like I don't want to be a burden onto other people, even though like
yeah.
usually people want to help or they,
Hmm.
they're happy to help. But I don't know. I always feel like I'm yeah, asking too much or like, yeah, feeling that
Mm.
burden. So a lot of times like we were just again just trying to figure it out on our own. Like we didn't talk to a lot of people. We didn't ask a lot of questions. We didn't have mentors. And we still kind of don't have mentors, which we're trying to figure out. But
Yeah,
like,
that's
yeah, so but yeah, definitely like it's been I think I
Mm.
would have asked definitely more questions early on, talk to more people, get their like viewpoints of like how they started their business, etc. And yeah, and just ask for more help because we would just take it on ourselves and then just like figure it out ourselves. And that obviously doesn't leave you in a good position a lot of times of just feeling overwhelmed or am I doing this right because you're not talking to anyone about it. Yeah, I think that kind of ties into like the fear of failure of like what I was talking about before
Yeah.
of just like I didn't want to fail and also like publicly fail too, right? If you talk about it more outwardly, like then you
Yeah.
kind of
It
have that.
becomes real.
Right. Yeah. You have that public
Mm.
accountability, I guess. Which
Mm.
again, I think is just more internalized of like you
Yeah.
think people are like judging you about if your business did fail. When in reality, they probably aren't. Like they probably aren't like thinking that things. So yeah, I think a lot of that was just like in my head at the time. I was just like, ask for help. People are there. And then I guess for your second question of like times when I wanted to quit, surprisingly more so in this recently, like the past 2 years, like with the pandemic, has been a
Mm.
lot of like challenges. I think it's interesting when a business does get bigger and get more successful, there is more headaches and there are more things that pop up that you're like, wait a second. I don't know. I guess maybe it's a little naive to say, but like Ricardo and I started this business not because we had some grand plan of like we're going to get acquired or we're going to do this or like become millionaires. We were like, frankly, we're just like, let's make fun content. Like we want to make content and we want to be our own bosses. Like that was literally like, we had no 5-year plan. We had no like, when people
Mm.
ask us that, we're just like, oh, I guess we should think of a 5-year plan, right? It was literally like, I just want to make fun content with my friend and like hopefully we could make money and like that could be sustain us, right? So when bigger problems started to arise and when it gets further away from that initial purpose of like, oh, I just want to make fun content, and it becomes more like, oh, now you got to talk to attorneys or you got to like, you have this issue that pops up that is out of your control, and you're like, is this all of this like hardship that's coming with
Yeah.
it worth it, right?
Right.
So it was a lot of moments like that in the past few years of like, man, like I just started this to make memes. What am I doing here? Like talking to like multiple attorneys or like, trying to figure out this solution that like you got pulled into that you're like, what? Like why? So yeah, I think that
Mm.
was a hard bridge of like, okay, is this worth it? Right. And like, frankly, we're still relatively a small business, right? So I
Yeah.
could only imagine, if we get bigger and like the scale gets bigger and more money comes in and more targets are on your back, what does that road look
Yeah.
like? So yeah, it still is daunting to even think about like what does the future look like in that regards. But I think ultimately, yeah, you just have to love what you're doing and hope that the rewards of it is worth, I think, the hardship of going through it.
I just feel like you guys went through so much just even though it's like, oh, crispy chicken has gotten better and like you guys have been blessed over the pandemic in terms of like the ways you've been able to use your services for clients. It's like, yeah, that comes with a lot of things that I can't imagine and
Yeah.
the headache of all of that.
Yeah, it's just again, it's
So,
just a lot of like finding solutions to things that you're just like,
have you been able to like find some sense of closure in that
yeah.
fear or
I think in some regards, yes and no. Like we're still in the growth phase, like that like
yeah.
we need to like keep growing to be able to kind of help navigate a little bit of that more. Like I'm still very much in charge of like payroll or like forecasting, and like
Mm.
I'm not a financial advisor like professionally, right? Like there's smarter people surely that know what they're doing than me. So there's still areas where I'm like, I would love to get this off my plate because it's not my expertise.
Mm.
And like in that too, it brings anxiety, right? Like if you're doing something that you're not totally sure of, brings a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely still areas that like I want to tweak and be able to be like, cool, like we have enough money to be able to like hire someone, full time to help release those responsibilities. But yeah, I think in the most part, like every experience does make you grow and learn something. So in that regards, I feel like, oh yeah, the next time this happens or whatever, I'm more confident or like I understand the process. So yeah, I think in some ways there is some closure, but not full closure because you're always going
Yeah.
to be learning and you're always going to have new things pop up. So
Oh my gosh, good luck. Sorry, that's all I can say.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, the fact that you guys did reach $1 million and you had that crazy post that just was even like through that video, which was a very like simple video with Ricardo. And
Mm,
in that moment, I could feel a lot of emotion and
mm,
just clearly like a lot of hardships that you guys endured to get there. So I just kind of like want you to take us back to that moment. Like, what did that feel like? What thoughts went through your head?
yeah.
Just to see that in your count.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Like it was weird because like we weren't even forecasted to hit $1 million last year.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
which again, whereas we were totally blessed and had a really strong like back half of the year, which is why we didn't see it coming in that regard. So yeah, I was crunching the
Yeah.
numbers because like, again, I'm the financial person right
The
now.
finance.
Yeah, and so I was like doing the math, I was like updating it, and I was like, I think we hit 1 million this year. I think we got it. And so that was a moment when obviously in that video too that I posted, it hit Ricardo first. He was comprehending it first than me.
Mm.
Cause for me, I was just like crunching numbers and I was like in the zone. And then when he started tearing up, my brain was like, oh wait, this is a bigger moment. Let me pause it and kind of like stop working and just like like kind of, which again is an issue I think a lot of entrepreneurs have, is like stopping and
Yeah.
really processing, because there's so many things like on your list to do that you're just like, okay, cool, on to the next, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, so that was a moment where I was like, oh, I should like probably like stop and try to reflect what this means. But it's really hard even now to like really process of like what that success and what that milestone means. But like clearly, we went from starting this without any money. So to be able to like build this to the point of being able to get $1 million in sales, like is crazy to think about. And
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, like I mentioned, we went through a lot, these past few years of a pandemic and like everything else, mental health, that, yeah, it was one of those moments where it's just like, yeah, like I can't believe we did it. And holy crap. So yeah, it was a lot of just processing. We
Mhm.
stuck through it. We didn't quit when we were able to grow this thing and hit that milestone. But yeah, I think it still is pretty hard to process, because also we're
Yeah.
in it day to day. I
Yeah.
think it was really easy. Like when we posted it, we got such an outpouring of love, which is like amazing to see. But probably also because like a lot of people didn't know that we were like hitting or close to
Yeah.
a million, whereas we're in it day to day, that it's just like a little bit more like, oh yeah, cool, we made like another deal, or like we're adding that in. So it was a little bit more of a slower, I guess, process of us realizing like, oh my gosh, like we're onto something, rather than like the day to day of it. It's like, oh, we get this project, cool, we got money, but now we have to figure out how to execute it, right? And so it's
Right.
constantly in that kind of mental cycle. So it is nice to actually like stop and celebrate your wins, instead of just like, this is another problem that I gotta like figure out, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not being able to really process that.
It's true because, like, when you get those big numbers, I don't realize that in your mind, then you have to suddenly troubleshoot or, like, what do you do with there? How do you execute that? And so there are
Yeah.
all these thoughts that immediately flood back. And I feel like I've known a lot of friends that are slowly trying to do their own business or a side hustle a business, and then they're coming to a point now where they're like, "Oh my gosh, crap, like it's actually been going great," which is like I'm like, "You should be happy." But then
Yeah.
it's like, "No, but that means like I have to find this legal person and I have to be the one that pays for some intern guy." And like
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it's like there is definitely that headache side that we don't get to realize cuz we it's kind of it's like the highlight reel. We get to celebrate the $1 million, but then it's like, wow, there's actually going to be a lot with that.
Yeah, yeah, it's not like you're winning the lottery and then you just can do
Yeah.
whatever you want with that money, right? It's like, yeah, you're selling a service and now you then have to like figure out how do you
Yeah.
execute that service. So you're happy to win big business, but then you're like, oh, now I gotta make sure they're happy.
Mhm.
Or if it's a new client, like you gotta prove yourself and
Yeah.
like that you were
Yeah.
worth it, or like whatnot. So there becomes a lot of
Yeah.
like that kind of imposter syndrome, or just like
Yeah.
insecurities of like, okay, now I gotta like actually perform and live up to
Yeah.
expectations or whatnot. But yeah, it is nice to celebrate the wins and try to take it in,
Yeah.
and yeah, and
I'm glad you paused and took that moment to record. I think it was a very like cool boss thing to do. You kind of brought up, one of the words I want to talk about with Korean Americans, but just in general with the hustle of a lot of us today. Like, we struggle with different things, and I just wanted to ask if any of these did resonate with you in terms of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, which you just mentioned, or burnout, or all three and all of the above type of
Mhm.
thing. What resonates with you, and how do you put systems in place to almost combat that?
Yeah, I mean, all three definitely resonate.
Mm,
Definitely perfectionism, and I feel like burnout for me kind of go hand in hand, and really just having strong boundaries, I think, on both accounts. Like for perfectionism, like I am very like meticulous about like the things I make and like the things we make for our clients. But ultimately, like I had to learn, I have to delegate, you know, especially
yeah.
as you get bigger. It's like I can't do it. There's only 24 hours every day. Like I can't do everything. And being able to say it's okay if it's not up to like whatever my personal standard is. Like again, like it's
Mm,
subjective too, right? In terms of content. And so yeah, just really just learning the boundaries of like I can only take X amount of work. So like you're gonna have to be okay letting go and like working through that.
mm,
And yeah, that also led to a lot of burnout, right? Like in the early stages of just like I'm taking on too much, or it has to be perfect in my eyes.
yeah.
So I feel like that those two kind of go hand in hand with me, in my experience. With imposter syndrome, it's funny, like, I thought I was over imposter syndrome, and then, like, it'll come back again because you're just dealing with new things all the time. Yeah, whenever I don't know, it's just something I think that, like, I have to, like, mentally just remind myself and think positively and talk positively to yourself of, like, "Hey, like, I've handled something like this before. You know, you're good at
Mm.
facing new challenges, like, things it'll be okay." Like, so yeah, I've been working with my therapist specifically about, like, trying to retrain how I'm speaking to myself, and I think that
Mm.
really, obviously a
I'm
work in
working on that
progress.
too.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of us, we're just super hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we just, we really are our worst critic and,
Mm.
like, our harshest critic, and we're just, like, constantly beating up ourselves. And so, yeah, I think it's like, how do we train ourselves to, like, think more positively and nicely to us? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just looked up INFJ strengths and weaknesses, and one of the I think it's a good thing too, but they wrote, like,
Yeah.
perfectionistic and prone to burnout.
Yeah. I'm living that. I am a living.
But also all the strengths are really cool, right? Because like, you're super creative and insightful, and it said, like, INFJs have an ability to, like, make their dreams, like, actually step into reality with
Mm.
active steps, and it's, like, so clear that that's something you've been able to do with all of these big ideas since
Yeah.
Fall Girl.
It really sums me up to a T, I think, like, in the pros and cons. Like, it's trying to find the balance between the 2 now is the fun
Yeah.
side of life. Yeah.
My sister is also an INFJ. I don't know if you ever knew that,
Oh,
but
I didn't know that.
I feel like INFJs are so rare, but I, like, know so many because I must just
Mm,
know so many great ones, you
attract
know?
all the INFJs, but yeah, I should talk to
Yeah.
her about that.
If I can ask, like, on a tangent, like, when did you start therapy and, like, how has
Mm,
that just, like, helped you in your processing? Because
yeah.
being your own self-critic worst critic, and even me, like, when I wanna reflect more on a different episode on just my, like,
Mm.
therapy journey as well, but kind of, like, allowing that to be normalized in this space, how has that been for you?
I started therapy really consistently at the end of 2020. Um,
Mm.
Earlier in 2020, like during the pandemic, I tried, like, I think it was BetterHelp, like one of the
Uh,
online ones, but I
yeah.
personally didn't have the best experience with it. Like, my therapist was kind of, like, not the best, I felt.
Uh-huh.
So I ended that, and then I actually found one that was, like, outside of the online kind of therapy platforms. I guess I was lucky. Like, the first person that I reached out to really vibed with her, and, like, I was like, okay, like, I feel kind of
Mm.
safe in terms of being able to, like, share my path and my thoughts and whatnot. So yeah, I've been with her a little bit over a year, a full, like, 15 months, I guess. But yeah, it's been super helpful. Even though, like, it's answers you already know sometimes. And I
Yeah.
find it really funny because, like, it does kind of feel like a teacher is talking to, like, a little kid sometimes when she's like, "So
Mhm.
how, like, what would you think if this happened this way?" And then you're just like, "Oh, it would be like this," or, like, you're kind of like, where she's
I
going with it.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then, but, like, to actually say it out loud and to have someone kind of
Yeah.
logically help you get there too has been super helpful, and, like, a good reminder of just, like, oh yeah, like, duh. But, like, for some reason, me in my own head again, like, I can't process
Mhm.
it, but, like, for someone else to be able to help you and, like, also kind of affirm you in that way of just, like you're doing a good job, or, like, you're just being hard on yourself, etc., has been super helpful to be able to, like, discuss with another person, like, candidly.
Mm.
Yeah, and just really be able to, because I don't know how many people really have those type of conversations just, like, on a day-to-day level with your friends
Yeah.
or your family members. Sometimes it might be too heavy for the situation, or,
Yeah.
so to really have an outlet of being able to share really whatever's on your mind, and then dig
Yeah.
deeper into, like, why that is, and not just
Yeah.
settle for, like, "Oh, it's just the way I am," or, "I just avoid it," or, like, yeah,
Yeah.
and really, like, digging in and, like, working on it, like, why is this a thing? Or, like, you don't have to just accept it and then walk away, right?
Yeah.
I highly encourage it, but yeah, I do think it takes a good, therapist match for it to, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
'Cause same, I didn't like my first match either, so I think
Mm,
that's important because sometimes people can just, "We see it didn't work, let's just not do it." But being, like, committed to even the process of finding a match
right.
would be a huge payoff, it sounds like, for both of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, what would you say to someone who feels like their best work is behind them.
Yeah. Ooh, that's tough because I feel that in my bones sometimes too. I'm like, am I getting too old for this or am I
I know you have to stay trending also with, like, everything. That's, like, a whole like, how do you stay
Yeah.
in the
I'm
know with
weirdly very
everything?
in tune with Gen Z, even though my body is like, please go to bed at 10 p.m. Yeah, I don't know. I think like speaking on like we're hard on ourselves, like
Yeah.
I think as human beings and something that I'm looking forward to in the future too is like learning new skills and learning new things that you're good at, right? If you think you are past your prime on like a certain task, like I don't know, I feel like we sometimes like build our whole lives around I'm a good doctor or I'm a good content creator. So like I stop making money, from being a content creator. I feel like my life is done or like I don't have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
Almost. Whereas no, I think like just keeping an open mind that like there could be a totally new thing or a new skill that you're interested in that you didn't know that you're interested in because you were so consumed with content creation or like you just never had the opportunity to even like try a different area and that you discover new interests and new passion. I'm, curious to see where my life takes me in that regards as I get older of like, hey, maybe I'm just like really good at playing bingo. Like, with all the older millennials, like, as we get old, right? Like just having an open mind and really being open to new opportunities and new areas that maybe you're closed off to before. But I think also just like maybe working through the thoughts of like being ageist too, right? Like if you do feel
Yeah.
like you're past your prime, but it's kind of like to whose standards, right? Even with like being a TikToker, I know people always talk about it's a Gen Z thing, but there's a lot of older like people on TikTok that
Yeah.
are crushing it. So I think, yeah, again, I think it's sometimes the limitations that we're putting on ourselves versus what's actually possible.
That's true. Kind of how do you keep your ideas and goals fresh if you want to share in a different way? But the way I've kind of been attracted to know about this answer from you is the creative retreats that you go on and
Mm,
that you've posted on your social medias. What does that look like? I know you take some friends with you and then
mhm.
like you guys seem to be secluded somewhere.
Yeah.
But I've always just been like, I wonder what they're doing there, and like, and how do you actually practice sparking that creativity back into you?
We're just eating snacks for 90% of it. It's snacks and naps. Um, I guess the first question of like, how do I keep my ideas fresh? That's a hard question that I don't even know if I have an answer for that. For the most part, I just try to get inspired by other people and like watch what other people are doing and like see if that spurs an idea. A lot of it is collaboration too, of just like bouncing off ideas with another teammate or whatnot. Cause I found myself too, like, making stuff by myself. I was always like, didn't want to share a script with someone. I think, again, kind of just like it's not good enough or whatever. You kind of just do things by yourself. But no, I really, really found I find it joyful to work with other people
Hmm.
and then that naturally for the most part if you again find the right people like it will make your ideas better and it will keep it fresh. For the creative retreats, so it's usually me and a couple of friends, 2 to 3 friends, and we try to just go out of the city because I think a lot of the times too, like noise pollution, and there's just like a lot of
Yeah.
you get overstimulated a lot and just being on screens a lot too. So we try to go somewhere like to the mountains or to the desert that's just quiet and then you're able to kind of like reflect. Normally too, we like delete our social media apps so that we're not distracted about just scrolling. And then we try to set a few items. We don't keep it too structured in that sense of like, from 2 to 3 we have to do this. It's more so like, hey, like let's do a creative writing session where we'll just like think of a prompt and just write it in 60 seconds and see what happens, right? Or we'll do watercoloring or arts and crafts or shoot photos and whatnot. So it's really just a time to kind of disconnect from the world a bit and also like, maybe try a creative exercise that I normally don't do on a day-to-day. Like I don't really do creative writing. So to be able to
Mm.
tap into that side of my brain is again kind of like exercising new muscles or different muscles that you don't get to really use every day. So that's basically it is just trying to get a little bit detached from the world and try to do creative activities that are fun, that you might not normally get to do.
And the other friends that you go with, they are also committed to the fact that this is a creative retreat
Yeah.
for themselves.
It's a great I
Mm.
usually go with my friend, Ariel, who's a photographer,
Mhm.
Colleen, and she's a writer for the LA Times,
Um,
and then my other friend, Rachel, she does, like, skits, and she's a
she's like
host.
in your shorts, right? In your
Yeah,
short
yeah,
films.
she
Okay.
acts, she's a
And
host,
all the different ones.
she does all of it. So, yeah, so they are innately also doing creative things, like, in their jobs, but again, it kinda gives us a different outlet of using yeah, being
Yeah.
creative differently, yeah.
Do you try to make that a yearly thing, or is it just like, is
Mhm.
that too much pressure to be like every year we should do a creative retreat, like
Yeah.
since it is like not supposed to be this structured thing?
We wanted it to be a yearly thing. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer than a year, but also because we went through a pandemic, it was a little bit harder
Yeah.
to get it organized. But yeah, we try to do it once a year. Time of year is always a little bit different, and location is we're open ended of like where we want to go. But yeah, for the most part, we just keep it like Friday to Sunday, and then like
Mhm.
have a fun time on Saturday
Yeah.
and Sunday, and then yeah, and then go back to work.
To life.
Go back to the real world.
What would be one piece of advice from someone that's trying to stand out in such a saturated industry?
I guess it kind of depends on what industry specifically or like what you're trying to do, but I think for the most part, if you are consistent, A, and then also B, just doing the work. I know that sounds really basic, but like a lot of the times, like, people want to start a podcast, right? But they
Mhm.
don't. But you're actually here doing the work, right? You're putting
Mm.
the effort into it. I think a lot of times people don't put in the effort or they stop too early. Keep doing your thing, keep adjusting and learning. If one method's not working, tweak it and then go from there and learn. If it starts to work, lean into it. And also, frankly, like being a nice human being.
Yeah,
Really
honestly.
yeah, because in today's society, I think, like, people wanna work with nice humans, and if you do your job well, being a nice human will definitely put you over the top versus, other people, so
It seems so, like, self-explanatory, but it's a reminder I feel like we need.
yeah, yeah.
Clearly or not, I don't know if all of us need it, but some of us listening definitely need that reminder, so I think that's important for us too. I think the last question I had was something I wanted to ask earlier, but kind of
Mhm,
wanted to save it for the end was, like for me, I've actually never moved out of Texas, right?
mhm,
And as much as I'd like to say, like I have like a lot of life experiences and different things like that, there is still like a geographical move that I've never really had to
mhm,
go through. And I'm
mm,
just curious, like moving out of Texas, and especially because Texas has very rooted identities in itself of
mhm.
how what it looks like maybe to even be a Korean American in Texas.
Yeah,
How did moving out like challenge you and or ultimately like develop you into the identity you carry today?
yeah,
Because I feel like it had to have changed. I don't know, but if it
yeah.
didn't, that's good too. Like your roots can still be the same. But yeah, that's kind of a loaded question, but something like as a maybe a forever Texan is curious about.
Do you wanna move out of Texas? I don't know if you wanna
I feel
share, but
like yeah, no, I feel like maybe I should listen to some of your like, I do feel like we've reached a point where that opportunity is a little bit more narrow. Like,
Mhm,
I think one time we wanted to move out, I did when I was younger.
mhm,
I think, like, now with, like, Matt being in medical like, on a medical journey, that's harder, I think, to figure out the options, and
right,
residency would have been a really cool time for us to experience that,
right.
but he got matched into Houston, which is a great program, Baylor College of Medicine, which we were really happy about. But we would have like been really excited if he also did North Carolina because it would have been that chance for both of us to kind of
Yeah,
live out of Texas. We both did when we were like 2 years old, right? But not when we were actual
adults, yeah.
adults. Yeah, and so I think now though it's like, oh, as we have kids, we're like grandparents would be nice or
Yeah,
like things that like make us justify staying, and also things like his practice and like networking first in Texas before we may move out later, but
yeah,
since he's about to become attending and he's made all his connections in Texas, like that would be a better start, like
mhm,
things like that. So then I know as time progresses, the chances will probably become like less and less
right.
of a reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I feel ya. Yeah, I think for me, leaving Texas, coming to LA, it's definitely opened up my horizons a bit in terms of, not only diversity, but just like different types of, careers that were possible for me, especially as a creative. Be in a
Yeah.
city where you go to Starbucks and like there's like five people typing on their laptops writing a screenplay was like really
Oh,
inspiring, in the sense of like, oh, like
yeah.
people are just out here trying to make things and like make it, I guess, in quotes, right? So yeah, I think in that regards it's actually helped me get inspiration, but also like confidence too of just like, you kind of work in a, I don't know, not having like thick skin, but like if you are like gonna make it out here, like you have to kind of step up your game too and like put yourself out there, try things, etc. So I think in that regards, environmentally, it's kind of crafted me that way, I guess, the past 10 years of building that confidence and like not being that shy kid anymore and like, really
Mm,
like holding my ground and like being inspired to make and keep making things. So I think that's probably been the biggest thing. And again, yeah, the diversity factor of just like being able to like,
yeah.
yeah, like have different experiences and have learn from other people too has been super helpful. But it was definitely easier for me than your situation right now, because I was like straight from college and I
Fresh
was
out
like,
of
yeah, I'm like, let's go do it. But yeah, it is. I personally really like the city, even for all of its faults. But that's initially, I think,
Mm,
what made me fall in love with it. It was just like, oh, like everyone's like pursuing their dreams and trying things. But yeah, it's tough. It's hard for me to imagine not to be in LA too in the long term. But I'm also trying not to close off of like, oh, what if there's an
yeah.
opportunity somewhere else, and go from there.
Anything else you want to share before we stop talking about your job?
Oh man, I feel like I shared a lot, almost too much. Sorry guys if anyone's like, man, she's talking a lot. But
No, it was good. It was really good.
no, I mean, if anyone is in that world right now and happy to have more
Mhm.
discussions or like, hit me up, DM me or whatnot, like happy to help in whatever,
But with boundaries.
yeah, in whatever facet I can for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, like going back to I wish I asked for more help. I'm throwing that out there here. So yeah, happy to help in whatever
Mm.
capacity I can.
Do you want to plug any of your socials for the few people that listen to it? That's what people do in some podcasts. Like, where can people find you?
Oh,
But also boundaries, so you don't have to.
nah, nah. I mean, I'm mainly most active on Instagram, but I am on
Mhm.
Twitter too, but it's at Mina Park 117 on Instagram. Or if you want to go to our company's website, it's crispychicken.co, spelled just like how you would normally spell crispy chicken. I know a lot of people spell like KRI, like they think we're like a
Uh,
unique.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
literally, yeah, CRISPY, crispychicken.co.
And for the listeners, it's because y'all were eating crispy chicken
Yeah.
when y'all were
Yeah, we
collaborating.
were, it was our first
Love
dinner
it.
of like, should we do this? Should we make a business?
Mm.
And then we were trying to think of names. We were doing the initials, like trying to think of like what other agencies are called. And then ultimately it was like, oh, let's get the crispy chicken sandwich. Like, what if we were called crispy chicken? And then like started laughing. And then no one had it in California and it wasn't trademarked. And
That's
so,
shocking.
yeah, so we ended up doing it and it worked out.
Love it. Okay, you can find her there. If you want to know a little bit more about Mina here, I have a few questions. What are three words that define you beyond CEO of Crispy Chicken?
Oh, 3 words?
Or it can be like phrases, I guess.
Huh, that define me outside. Hopefully lighthearted. I feel like
Mm.
I don't take things too seriously. Hopefully empathetic. I probably cry a lot more than you think that
Oh.
I do, but
Yeah, I don't know why I wouldn't think that, but
yeah,
that's
I
good
don't
to
know.
know.
I have a lot of feelings.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then probably just passionate. I think
Yeah.
passion drives me a lot. So, yeah.
And if you had to be a fruit,
Oh.
what fruit would you be and why?
Ooh, maybe a blueberry because it's,
Oh.
good for you but still sweet, and I don't know.
I don't think I sent you this question in
Yeah,
advance. I realized you
I'm just going off top of my
Well,
head right
Jaden's
now.
favorite fruits are blueberries, so clearly they're important
Oh,
in
that's
our
good.
lives,
Nice.
just like you are.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, and I'm gonna close it out with it's not really a game. I just thought of it right before we got on.
Uh-oh.
But like, because you're like one of your defining things was music, and that's actually kind of like something I knew you as growing up. So just giving you like six categories and tell me what song it would be.
Oh God. Just am I- all right. Let's see.
We'll see. We're just trying to like, understand your musical taste and whatnot.
My musical
So
taste is all over the place right now. Like
actually, right now it's probably like TikTok
it's a
songs.
lot of
Like,
TikTok sounds. Yeah, probably.
okay, what's your guilty pleasure song?
Ooh, that's tough. Right now, this guilty pleasure is also a really funny like word just because it's like, oh, you're like,
Yeah,
why are you ashamed or like for
yeah,
liking this song?
that's true. It's more like a guilty pleasure movie. And I guess
Huh.
those are like, what about your pleasure song? Your guilty one. Let's just stick with guilty
Yeah, I
pleasure.
think it was funny. It's weird, like because Spotify Wrapped. I mean, it came out a few months ago, but like I remember seeing Justin Bieber on there, and I was like, "Is that?
Mm,
Am I ashamed for being a believer?"
believer.
Yeah, like, even though obviously he makes very good music and he's a
Yeah,
very good
yeah.
singer. So, I don't know, maybe some song from Justin I'll throw in
Some
there.
Justin Bieber
Yeah.
song. Okay. What's your out on a road trip with your girlfriend song?
Ooh, probably some Taylor Swift song. I feel like her music is always a fun, like, karaoke thing where everyone just knows the words. So
Yeah.
maybe for now, I'll just say the 10-minute All Too Well version.
Uh, I like don't know many Taylor Swift
Oh, you're
songs.
just like, "Oh,
Not that
yeah."
I'm not anti or anything. I just like I suck at music, so I'm gonna look up some songs after. What is your like you want to get out of a difficult time song?
I listened to Hard Times by Paramore.
Mm.
Even though the song itself, the lyrics are somewhat sad and like it's not really a hopeful song, which I guess is the irony that I would listen to that. But the music is very like poppy, like happy. So it kind of has the balance of like the lyrics are really like
Mm.
sad, but it's a really like upbeat music. So something about
Mm.
singing along to that song about hard times, but in a cheerful way. I don't know. It still like makes me,
Gets you out of
yeah, because
the
it kind of makes me feel like I'm not alone, that someone else is also like
Yeah.
having hard times, but like you can dance about it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I like that. What's your "We Made $1 Million" song?
All I do is win, 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 no matter. That's
Perfect. Honestly. What's your F the haters or F the legal attorneys? I don't
Whoa,
know. What's F
man.
the haters song?
Man, now I'm just going into the TikTok sounds, but you know the
Mm.
Rihanna's the "You look so dumb right now." That
Oh,
line? Yeah, just that
yeah.
line.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that was, like, one of my heartbreak songs,
Oh,
so
really?
that's a great yeah, not a heartbreak, but, like, F the hater of the
Right.
guy kinda thing,
You're so
so
dumb.
yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. And finally, what is your life song?
Ooh, it's funny. I don't like have a life song in the sense that it like represents me.
Yeah.
I just like really like the song always. Is just Coldplay Fix You.
Oh, I think that's one of Matt's favorites too, to be
Yeah, like it's
honest.
not a life song where it like defines me, I guess, but like I really like the buildup of that song and also just like the lyrics of maybe it falls into my empathetic side of just like
Yeah.
yeah, so I can listen to that song all the time.
Hmm. I feel like Coldplay was, like, right before my time.
Oh, so you're like, "I don't know that song either."
I just, like yeah, I just know, like, Coldplay is, kinda like a Switchfoot vibe? No?
Yeah, yeah,
Is that a disservice?
I can see
Okay.
similarities there. Yeah, you should I mean, you've heard of Fix You, right?
I'm pretty sure I have
Oh
because
my
I think
gosh.
it's one of Matt's songs. So
You
I'm pretty sure I have, but, like, I'm the worst music person ever.
oh,
So,
okay, you definitely need
yeah.
to listen to that
I will
song.
listen to that
Okay.
one and then the Paramore song I'm
Yeah,
interested
that's a
in
fun
because
song
I also like to get in my feels, and I feel like that will help me get out of it in a
in a
way that
fun
still
way.
validates it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like I'm excited for that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mina, and for talking to me for so long. I
No, thank you.
appreciate you, and I feel like I got to learn so much more about you, and I'm rooting for you. And
Well, yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, of course. Thank you guys for listening, and we hope you enjoyed Color Commentary.
Woo!
Wow, so many of us come from families of small business owners, and we have seen the hard work and endurance that comes with being an entrepreneur firsthand. It's crazy to realize that this passion and hustle is still alive in our generation for so many of us like Mina and me. From being that shy girl in a big school to now a freaking boss woman of a thriving media company, this is a reminder that you can achieve what you put your mind and heart to. I am rooting for you in your own hustle. Thank you, Mina, for reminding us of the beauty in finding opportunity and just going for it. That shy high school girl in me feels super inspired. Make sure to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Go to Kohler Commentary to comment your key takeaways and join the email list to share what you want to hear about next. I would love to know what you want to listen to. Until next time, bye.